Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahansa Purivraj Kachada Satara Sata Shri Shrimad His Divine Grace of Charanamindra Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Brinda Ki Grantha Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Go Premanandi All glory to the Summer devotees. All glory to the Summer devotees. All glory to the Summer devotees. All glories to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, and Srila Prabhupada. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, Volume 6, chapter titled, I Have Done My Part. Srila Prabhupada was very affectionate toward Giriraj for his faithful, fearless service, and he listened with great appreciation, closing his eyes and drinking in every word of the prayer. That same evening, Srila Prabhupada set up to receive a member of parliament, Sri Sitaram Singh. Although he was appreciative that a highly placed man was visiting, he spoke on the absolute plane, exposing material illusions. Immediately he attacked the narrow-mindedness of politicians with their party politics. He also exposed the rascaldom of politicians who claimed to support nonviolence on the basis of the Bhagavad Gita. At times like this, the devotees with Srila Prabhupada would almost forget that he was making preparations for the end of life. Later that night, after Mr. Singh had left, Prabhupada said, I can speak some more, or if Krishna desires, then whatever I have given already, that is all. Srila Prabhupada was unlimitedly willing to speak about Krishna and to help give Krishna consciousness to others. But how much longer he would stay, how much more he would give was up to Krishna. With more time, he would carry on Krishna's will in the material world. But if Krishna's desire was that he should leave, then he would also accept that willingly. Even if he had to soon depart from this world, he could not simply shut off his burning compassion, his preaching spirit. Most of all, he desired that what he had started, a worldwide movement to save suffering souls, should continue. The word was sent to all GBC secretaries worldwide. Srila Prabhupada might depart very soon, and he wanted them to be with him in Vrindavan as soon as possible. As soon as possible, the GBC men left their duties and came to him. The last time most of them had been with him was in February, during the annual meeting in Mayapur. Tamal Krishna informed them of Srila Prabhupada's recent turns, how he had been preaching in Bombay but not eating, how he had gone to Rishikesh and gotten worse, and how he had come to Vrindavan sensing that the end was soon. Tamal Krishna had explained that Srila Prabhupada had asked that he simply be administered the medicine of the holy name continually, that the GBC and sannyasis be gathered to chant with him, and that a will be made securing ISKCON properties and ensuring the continuation of the ISKCON institution. Tamal Krishna also mentioned that Prabhupada had said that their love for him would be shown by their cooperation in keeping ISKCON together after his departure. Tamal Krishna Goswami confided to his godbrothers that his own feelings were mixed. It was a time of sorrow, and yet Srila Prabhupada seemed relieved now that he had decided not to struggle to survive. Tamal Krishna said he couldn't but feel happy at Srila Prabhupada's relief from all concerns. Bhavananda Goswami, one of the first GBC men to arrive, told the others how he had said to Prabhupada that on the one hand he felt sad that Prabhupada was departing, but also joyful that he would be able to leave this nasty material world and rejoin Krishna. Prabhupada had approved the sentiment, adding that although his Guru Maharaj had become disgusted at the end of his life due to the misbehavior of his leading disciples, he did not feel that. Rather, he liked the company of his disciples and felt they were doing their best in carrying out his order. But he also warned them not to spoil ISKCON and become another Gaudiya Math by splitting up. The ISKCON leaders formed small groups and took turns in being with Prabhupada and chanting and reading to him. He would often be sitting up in the bed in his main room downstairs, and the high-ceilinged room with its black stone floor would be very dimly lit, though decorated with flowers and framed pictures of ISKCON deities. His room was comfortable, despite the oppressive heat, because of the air cooler and overhead fans. Sometimes Prabhupada would clap his hands softly to the kirtan, and he was always ready to hear and evaluate reports of his disciples' preaching. The main difference about Prabhupada was his physical appearance. As one GBC man put it, he looked like one of the great ascetics depicted in the Srimad Bhagavatam, grown extremely thin like Dhruva Maharaj or Rantidev, who performed great austerities while wrapped in meditation on the absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Very interesting how Srila Prabhupada mentions this point about, well, not he mentions, but Tamal Krishna mentions, the point about the will being there to protect ISKCON properties. If it wasn't for that will, we might not be sitting here today. What's our guest's name? Morris. Nice to have you here with us. Why don't you give Prabhu a chair so he can sit comfortably?
This chair's over there.
Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 14th chapter, text 47. Chapter titled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. Yat prasadaridang vishwang.
Yat prasadaridam vishwam.
Yat prasadaridang vishwang.
Yat prasadaridam vishwam.
Prasidati yadatmakam.
Prasidati yatmakam.
Prasidati yadatmakam.
Prasidati yatmakam.
Saswadrig Bhagavan Yasya.
Saswadrik Bhagavan Yasya.
Saswadrig Bhagavan Yasya.
Saswadrik Bhagavan Yasya.
Toshite Nanyayajasha.
Yate Nanyayajasha.
Toshite Nanyayajasha.
Yate Nanyayajasha.
Please repeat, or please chant.
Yat prasadadidham vishwam.
Yat prasadadidham vishwam.
Prasidhati yatmakam.
Prasidhati yadatmakam.
Swasadrik bhagavan yasya.
Saswadrig Bhagavan Yasya.
Toshite nanyayajasha.
Toshite Nanyayajasha. Yat prasadaridang vishwam. Prasidhati yadatmakam. Sasvadrik Bhagavanyasya Doshite Nanyayadasha
Yat Prasadadidam Vishwam
Yat Prasadadidam Vishwam
Prasidati Yadatmakam
Prasidati Yadatmakam
Sasvadrik Bhagavanyasya
Sasvadrik Bhagavanyasya
Ananyayajusha
Doshite Nanyayadasha
Prasadadidam Vishwam
Yat Prasadadidam Vishwam
Prasidati Yadatmakam
Prasidati Yadatmakam
Sasvadrik Bhagavan Yasya
Sasvadrik Bhagavanyasya
Toshate Nanyayadrisha
Doshite Nanyayadasha. Ladies. Yat Prasadadidam Vishwam Prasidati Yadatmakam Sasvadrik Bhagavanyasya Doshite Nanyayadasha. Yat
Yat
by whose
by whose
prasadat
Prasadat
mercy of
mercy of
idang
Idam
this
this
Vishwam
Vishwam
universe prasidati
Prasidati
becomes happy.
becomes happy.
Yat
Yat
whose Atmakam
Atmakam
because of his omnipotence.
because of his omnipotence.
Sa he Swadrik
Swadrik
taking special care for his devotees.
taking special care for his devotees.
Bhagavan
Bhagavan,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
the Supreme Personality of God.
Yasya
Yasya
whose Doshite becomes pleased.
comes pleased.
Ananyaya
Ananyaya
without deviation.
without
Drisha by intelligence.
by intelligence.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Everyone will be pleased with him because the personality of Godhead, the supreme controller of the universe, is always satisfied with a devotee who does not wish for anything beyond him. Please repeat. Everyone will be pleased with him
Everyone will be pleased with him
because the personality of Godhead,
because the personality of Godhead,
the supreme controller of the universe,
supreme controller of the universe,
is always satisfied with a devotee
is always satisfied with a devotee
who does not wish for anything beyond him.
who does not wish for anything beyond him.
Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated everywhere as the Supersoul, and he can dictate to anyone and everyone as he likes. The would-be grandson of Diti, who was predicted to be a great devotee, would be liked by everyone, even by the enemies of his father, because he would have no other vision besides the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A pure devotee of the Lord sees the presence of his worshipable Lord everywhere. The Lord reciprocates in such a way that all living entities in whom the Lord is dwelling as the Supersoul, also like a pure devotee, the Lord reciprocates in such a way that all living entities in whom the Lord is dwelling as a Supersoul, also like a pure devotee, because the Lord is present in their hearts and can dictate to them to be friendly to his devotee. There are many instances in history wherein even the most ferocious animal became friendly to a pure devotee of the Lord. Om Jnana Tamandasya Garanjana Salakaya Chaksuramlatamina Tasmai Sri Gurve Namaha Mukam Kaloti Pachalam Pangu Mankarte Gurum Yakuptam Ham Bande Sri Gurum Dirtanam. Is there a difference between the translation here and what was there? Not the translation, the purport? Or was everything the same?
No, everything is the same. At least I think so when I was reading it.
Well, is it interesting? Some in the Lilamrita, besides the point about the will, that Srila Prabhupada's reaction to Giriraj Maharaj's prayer. So we don't always get the opportunity to see Srila Prabhupada's reactions, or we didn't always get the opportunity to be personally present to see how Srila Prabhupada reacted to a specific situation. But in this instance, we see very clearly how Prabhupada was pleased by the sincere prayers of his devotee, of his disciple. So we can take this with our regards to our prayers to Krishna, that they do not go without notice. Sometimes it may appear that what is the reciprocation? You know, I'm praying, someone, of course, the materialists are praying for something limited. They're praying for daily bread or to win the lottery or something like that, temporary. But if one can please the Supreme Lord by his sincere prayers, then what is not possible? You know, so this is just something to be observed, that we should not, because we all know the basic routine prayers. We chant them every day. But one should not neglect to feelingly offer prayers to the deity or the spiritual master at every opportunity. These such heartfelt prayers serve to make the heart a proper sitting place, you know, for the super soul. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai. So this, and we see that here later on, in various chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see the prayers by Queen Kunti. We see the prayers by Prahlad Maharaj. So these are not just some one-off situation that they prayed in some distress, or they prayed like this. As a matter of fact, Queen Kunti is saying that, please let me be put in distress repeatedly so that I can remember you. So this is very few people are praying in that way. Everyone's praying for some other benefit. But here Kunti is praying that let me be repeatedly put into distress so that I remember you and pray to you and feel dependent upon you. You know, so this should be our mood, always dependent on Krishna, you know, and ready to serve in whatever capacity. You know, there's the tendency is there also to, you know, the tendency is that you get your marching orders and you follow on and carry out the mission, whatever is required like that. But there's not very much individual, how can you say, intention. But for the devotee, he is establishing his personal relationship with the spiritual master and Krishna. So he's very much able to exercise his minute independence in a meaningful, hopefully pleasing way in order to execute his duties. In other words, he may be told, go wash the pots. But then, you know, to one person, washing the pots means just rinsing them with water. Another person may think, well, let me add a little soap. That would be nice. And another person may scrub that pot till it shines like it was brand new. So there's a lot of output in those different circumstances, and one can see it. You know, that, you know, sometimes you can hardly tell that the pot was washed. You know, and other times the pot is glowing like the sun. So it's very easily to see the intention that was invested in that activity. So we have to be careful how we execute should not be just to do the least or to do the minimum. But we should put, and there's the materialists are very fond of saying, and it's accurate, that a job worth doing is a job worth doing well. Right? Everyone's heard this from his father, grandfather, great-grandfather. Why? Because it's what's called a truism. It has stood the test of time. It's widely accepted. There's many such truisms, and some of them have more relevance than others. But there's, with regards to our service, we should accept whatever is favorable and reject whatever is unfavorable. So if something assists you to do a job devotionally, not just quickly or efficiently, but all three combined, quickly, efficiently, and devotionally, with heart. And that's a favorite saying of some of our kirtan leaders, right? With your heart. But actually, Prabhupada said that one time in Mayapur. He gave a definition. Let me think of the word. But the definition was full surrender with all your heart, no reservation. So the Sanskrit word, if you look up that, you'll find that full surrender with all your heart, no reservation. So it's when you hear such explanations, this sutra means like a code. It is a lot of meaning in a very few words. Right? What is it that Vaisheshika puts on his concise, what is that? On his tagline, on his emails?
A word spoken concisely is true eloquence.
So we should appreciate when we hear such things from Srila Prabhupada. He's giving us instructions, as he's saying here. He's done his part. He's given us everything. And he's satisfied that, like he used to say, everything is in my books. Right? Everything is in my books. So we have to carefully scrutinize, not that one hasn't, of course, and everyone has experienced this. It's not that you read these books one time and then you've extracted every possible meaning. Because as one advances in spiritual life, tada rajas tamo bhavo kama lobhadayas chaye, cheta eter anavidam stitvam sattvam prasidati. His realization advances along with his purification. So that analogy of the bhakti lata bij, that bij means seed. So in the beginning we have a seed, and from the seed comes a creeper. And this creeper gradually grows upwards towards the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, piercing the material coverings and entering into the spiritual world. This is just an analogy. But it's a clear picture of progress in spiritual life. All right? If you do not water the seed of devotion, then you can't expect any growth. And if you maintain so many anarthas, then these weeds will overcome the fragile bhakti lata creeper. So the Goswamis are giving these analogies to make it simple for those who are simple. Doesn't require some academic, intense, routine, daily addressing these things. But it requires a constant level of consciousness in order to maintain equilibrium in spiritual life. This is just common sense. Niyamagraha, niyamagraha, atihara, priyasascha, pajalpa, niyamagraha. So there's different levels of whether one is following or not following, or over-endeavoring or not endeavoring enough. So all these things have to be there. It's a balance. Prabhupada quoted the razor's edge. That razor's edge is a very famous saying from, during Srila Prabhupada's time. They even had a movie called The Razor's Edge. Perhaps Prabhupada was familiar with it or not, but it was quite a famous movie about a person who was in pursuit of some spiritual goal. And it was an American movie, actually. And if one is so inclined and he wants to get some further exposure to the razor's edge, it wasn't a bad film in that regard. It showed an honest attempt at a person who was serious, trying to negotiate the, at that time, very flamboyant social life, being drawn by, material attachments, allurements, and wanted to seek the truth by approaching a guru. It's all in there. It's amazing. This was done in the 1930s. But the razor's edge, what is the analogy? That if one is not careful, then just a slight slip will reveal blood. Right? So this is what? So spiritual life is very nice, very simple. Right? Kevala Anandakanda, joyfully performed. But one has to take care in any respect. Just like we saw that Mother Sukanti's dad was out enjoying on his boat when there was an unexpected incident that could have cost him and his companions their lives. Very serious. And we know that his condition was, not as serious, but one of the passengers had to be airlifted. So apparently there were significant burns, which usually occur from being in the water covered with fuel, but it could have been from the initial explosion as well. Many sailors perished after their boat was torpedoed, not from the initial blast, but from being tossed into burning waters covered with oil and fuel that was ignited. So it's not a very pleasant way to go, sort of like what you might expect a hellish planet to be like. And there are some hellish planets which have similar situations. Another point to hear in this verse, where we see the preview of Prahlad Maharaj's appearance, is that and Prabhupada makes this clear, that it is not always that the son of a Brahmana is a Brahmana. Because these demons, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, others, many of them were born in Brahmin families. But they were not obviously qualified. And that's that Chaturvana Mayashishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasaha. That is not automatic, that if one takes birth in a social caste, Brahmin, Kshatriya, that he is automatically a Brahmin or a Kshatriya, or even a merchant. Right? Kalo Sudra Sambhava, although everyone is a Sudra. That's a fact. Kalo Sudra Samabha. In Kali Yuga, everyone is born as a Sudra. But one becomes qualified by his actions. Guna Karma Vibhaga Saha. So this, and therefore this Krishna conscious movement has been able to expand on that principle. You know, and we see how Prahlad Maharaj, although surrounded by those born in demoniac families, he was not intimidated by peer pressure to conform to the mentality of his playmates. Rather, he was able to influence them. And what did he want? What did he say? He said we should pray. So this praying is not just some sentimental action by those merely in distress or by the, sometimes it's portrayed as a sign of weakness. But there's no weakness to be found in knowledge. It takes knowledge and realization to pray. Rather, it is an elevated position where one understands that I have a relationship with Krishna, that I can directly offer my prayers to the Lord, as we see in so many, like I said, prayers by Prahlad Maharaj, prayers by even Dhruva Maharaj. And there'll be, and since time immemorial now, I mean, so at least the Bhagavatam is 5,000 years old. So at least since that time, these prayers were so memorable that they've been enshrined and will continue to be recited and revered for another, well, at least in the golden age of Kali Yuga, at least for 9,500 more years. After that, Kali Yuga will pretty much take over. Rapid onset of terminal symptoms. Right? It happens. Right? So we should be very grateful, first of all, that we have this opportunity to examine carefully spiritual life in such a way that we can present it to others faithfully, without adulteration. You know, this will be our success. It will also be our badge of honor to not adulterate. You know, try to water down or alter the philosophy to suit our own purposes, for self-aggrandizement, to make a name. Yeah, people do this all the time. We've seen it so many, over the course of so many years. Someone thinks, now I've got some knowledge, let me exploit it and become whatever, famous. I'll write a book, I'll start a school. And in this way, one falls off the path. They think they're still on the path, but they're no longer on the path. The pure path is those who follow strictly in the footsteps. And that's why we're also termed as Rupanugas, following the footsteps of the Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis. And then what was that? And that, of course, this Rupanuga is not a cheap label. For one to approach this level, he has to show and demonstrate over time his attachment and loyalty, to the philosophy. It's just not. And what is that? So we said, did you find that? Full surrender with all your heart, no reservation. We have to look for that. Atma, what is that? I have to remember that. Sarvatmana. See? There it is. That's the word. Sarvatmana. Full surrender with all your heart, no reservation. How Prabhupada put those together is very nice. It's extremely clear. It's not that I surrender one time. No, surrender with all your heart. And it's not that I surrender partially or just for today or, maybe for a week or a month or a year. No. No reservation. No reservation. So reservation doesn't mean what we're thinking about, like a train ticket. Reservation is what you hold back. Reservation means I don't fully commit. I have some reservation about plunging into the ice-cold water of Jones Beach in January. Right? But no reservation means I don't have anything. I won't let anything hold me back. So that's what no reservation means. Nothing can hold you back. So this determination is brought about by this simply chanting the holy names with what? Full surrender, no reservation. Not for any, that nadanam, najanam, that we have this. The Lord is giving us these instructions not to be distracted by and chant for some ulterior purpose, not for wealth, not for women, not for anything else, but simply for the pleasure of the Lord and to act to become an instrument. Nimitta macham bhava savyasacham. Why was Savyasachan was an interesting name. Arjuna has so many names. And Krishna is labeling all these, giving them these names at different times. And of course, Arjuna was expert in so many ways, but he had some reservation. And therefore he couldn't fully, vyavasayatmaka buddhi, couldn't fully focus his attention and intention because those reservations are holding him back. But he was obviously the most qualified warrior on the battlefield. No one could defeat him. He defeated Lord Shiva. This is not who can defeat Lord Shiva? It's not possible for an ordinary mortal. But of course, he's really not an ordinary mortal, but, he's taking this part, for the benefit of everyone, to illustrate the bewilderment that comes about due to influence of the modes of material nature. So that's why the Bhagavad Gita is such a complete work. There's nothing left to be discussed if one has sincerely approached it in a mood of understanding. To this, you can't reach another conclusion, and sometimes it's surprising. Like if you ask a person, "Have you read Bhagavad Gita?" and you don't want to tell them that because you're speaking learned words, but actually you're a fool. You're talking all these things, but it doesn't appear that you've really read Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes it's the polite way of saying, have you read Bhagavad Gita? In other words, did you understand what you read? Have you acted upon your realization? Are you putting it into action every day? This is common if you're, in any endeavor, regardless of spiritual or material. Whatever you have learned, you have to apply. We even have a term for it. It's called applied knowledge. So this applied knowledge means that I'm acting with understanding and realization. Jnanam prajnanam astikyam brahma karma svabhavajam. So there the Gita distinguishes and differentiates between knowledge and wisdom. So wisdom is realized knowledge. And that's otherwise it just seems like two similar words, interchangeable, but they're not. The one who knows, he knows. Right? They have that saying, Now you see it everywhere. If you know, you know. Nobody even has to say it out loud. They have it on T-shirts. You know, I-Y-K-Y. If you know, you know. So it's an unspoken understanding. You know, that if someone sees something, he can immediately relate to it and understand the situation because he has realization. And on the battlefield, this is what separates someone's success or failure of a campaign. The ability to see things, everything, and take in the whole picture. And then know exactly what to do under the circumstances. Because no battle plan remains intact once the enemy is met. So how is a battle won? Because one person was able to see, once everything began to manifest, what could be done to alter or ensure the outcome. And they have an interesting French term for it, coup d'oeil. It means to see the light. You know, we have that, everyone has that aha moment, you know, in his life when they first got that understanding or that realization how he's not this body. You know, it's like, and what do the cartoons do? How does the cartoon portray it? They have a light bulb. Right? See the light. Because Prabhupada used that in a different way in Vrindavan. We've told that before. When Prabhupada was doing parikrama around the temple, and you know, usually you do parikrama 3 times, and every time he came through the passageway underneath the kitchen, he said, "I see, but you do not see." And then he would keep walking. And he came around through the passageway again, and he said, "I see, but you do not see." The devotees were totally bewildered. They don't understand what's going on. I think some very high philosophical aspect, you know. On the 3rd time, Prabhupada came through the passage and said, "I see, but you do not see." And finally, the devotees said, "Prabhupada, what do you mean? What does that mean? Please tell us, what does that mean?" And Prabhupada took his cane and pointed up at the burning light and said, "I see, but you don't see." That 3 times they walked around and nobody thought, why is the light burning? Because after Mangalarti, it begins to become light. And somebody forgot to shut off the light, which is there so you don't bump your head in the dark passageway or, you know, step on a snake. So it was a very simple thing. I see, but you do not see. So, but analogously, we can understand that, yes, you know, for one who can see everything, you know, like Srila Prabhupada, he takes in more than we mere mortals usually understand. Because his vision is different. It's like putting on and taking off your glasses. If I take off my glasses, everything's a blur. You know, I can see, I have nearsighted, so I can see close, I can't see far. But then as soon as you put on your glasses, you can see far, and then you realize, oh, there's some danger there. That's why you don't drive. If you need glasses, you don't drive without your glasses. You don't want to run into the back of a truck or a concrete post. So when we get these spiritual vision, we have to use it properly. You know, not become puffed up and think, oh, now I have understood. I am a gopi. So I only have to act now like a gopi. I don't have to act like something else now. I'm done with I don't have to wash the pots anymore, clean the floor, do any devotional service, chant my round, nothing. Just have to, make flower garlands. So there's so many pitfalls that are presented by misunderstanding. But everything is here in Srila Prabhupada's books if one is carefully reading them. So this will prevent any misunderstanding. But we have to be sincere in our reading and not just be reading, as opposed to having no glasses, having some rose-colored glasses, some special glasses where everything is filtered and you only see what you want to see and only read what you want to read and understand what you want to understand and ignore everything else. And Prabhupada, these words are not to be ignored. You can't say, well, I don't like this part. I'll skip it. Let me go to the next part. It doesn't work like that. You can't leave, some aspect of the foundation in a building incomplete and expect that the building will survive for any length of time. Everything has to be done properly. So we're building on foundational principles, regulative principles, devotional principles, our sadhana. It's compared in many places as these parallel tracks, that one has to be careful. The train runs on these two rails, and if one rail is damaged or missing, then there's a derailment. The train goes off the track. So this can easily happen through some misunderstanding. When one stops following the order of the spiritual master and thinks, I can just go on one track. Even they have sometimes you hear someone say that he has a one-track mind. But what is that track? Is it the right track, the wrong track? It means he's stuck. He can't change. So we have to also be willing to accommodate these realizations in such a way that they have a positive effect on ourselves and our surroundings. Prabhupada didn't let his elevated realization stop him from getting on a steamship and traveling 39 days, halfway around the world and experiencing 2 heart attacks and seasickness. You wouldn't wish seasickness on anyone. If you've never had it, you have no idea. And then get off and struggle like this. This is not an ordinary feat. But Srila Prabhupada was not an ordinary person. So anyway, we have the benefit of all this historical context, of our parampara, reading the Lilamrita, planting the seed, up through I have done my part. And if one can look at these circumstances objectively, he actually is able to step outside the box and see that this movement, the historical aspect of this movement is just beginning. 50 years in, it's nothing. Christianity, 2,000 years, Islam, 1,800 years, Buddhism, 3,000 years. These things took time for them to mature. But this movement has spread all over the world like wildfire. So this is exceptional. In those days, there wasn't internet or anything, communication. So Lord Chaitanya is advented at a specific time for a specific purpose. His Senapati Bhakt, Srila Prabhupada, has come at a specific time for a specific purpose. This movement is here for a specific purpose, to spread Krishna consciousness. And we have to take that very seriously. As serious as if you were in a war. Sometimes in India they used to use that term, on a war footing. Is that correct, Arjun? You've heard that term? On a war footing. Means to mobilize everything. When there's a war, all of a sudden all your private industry becomes militarized. And so within a year we were producing tens of thousands in World War II, tens of thousands of planes and tanks and weapons. So this is on a war footing. All of a sudden, all this war material was just ships, planes, so many things. So this is, for us, it's the same thing. We have to mobilize in such a way that we can attack Maya. You know, we're not really attacking Maya in one sense, but we're attacking how Maya affects the living entity, to pierce those modes of material nature. Maya herself is out of our reach. But the effects of her influence is not out of our reach. Dispelling the doctrines of ignorance is not out of our reach. And we're doing it every day. But we have to continue to do it in such a way that there's no, how can you say, diminution. It cannot be reduced for any reason. But that requires that everything has to be in good working order. This temple has to be in good working order. And our consciousness has to be in good working order. We have to be able to function. We can't be, hampered by some deficiency. This is the most important movement. We would think if you look at some well-oiled machine, that's what they call a corporation, that has all of its component parts, there's nothing missing. If something needs to get done, it's immediately everything is in place to do it. The infrastructure, all right? The organization, everything is there. So that's how Krishna consciousness, that's how these temples have to be. So efficient to go out and bombard, this Maya civilization with the holy name. So we have 5 minutes for questions. We want to end on time, right, Chaitanya? Yes.
This last point you were making, Prabhu, about, like having a fire under your feet, and we want to spread this movement, missionary spirit. How has that kind of declined or went down within the movement? From what I heard previously, the devotees had that, like, we're going to take over the world type of spirit. And how much is it needed to bring it back, and what could we do as individuals to bring that back?
Well, every one of us has the order of the spiritual master. Whether you know it or not, whether you accept it or not, the order is there automatically. Priti Biti Ati Nagari Gram. Lord Chaitanya already gave this order to everyone, not just those who were born in India. It may seem that at that time, he was speaking to people because that was the immediate audience. But when Prabhupada came here, he relayed that order intact to every one of us. And every one of us is born again in this movement. So therefore, that order holds as much weight on us as it would have to anyone born in India. So we're directly empowered by Lord Chaitanya himself. This is not an ordinary thing. But whether we want to accept that and fully, what does it say? Surrender, no reservation, that is up to us. That's all it takes. What may appear to be some diminished capacity for preaching, it shouldn't be misunderstood. Everything is there. Prabhupada's books haven't disappeared, vaporized. The pages haven't become blank, by some asuric effect. No, everything is there. So if it appears that things are not happening on the same level, yes, it means that for those who observe that, they have to take it up seriously. They should not think, well, this person is not doing it. I'm not going to do it. This temple is not doing so good. So we should all that's the common denominator illusion. It all exists throughout the material world. Is that people can't have a high standard, so they find the low standard that everyone can be on. The lowest common denominator. And instead of trying to lift everyone to a higher level, everyone just accepts the lowest level as the normal situation. So we already have the highest example. We have Srila Prabhupada. There's no higher example. Like I said, who could do what he did? It's not exclusive in the sense that, but he empowered his disciples to do this, and we saw that. Young men and women going, to London with literally 1 year's experience in Krishna consciousness. Okay, now you've been in Krishna consciousness for how many years? Your whole life? Okay, so technically you can go any place and open up a center. They went with 1 year. 1 year's experience to London, to Germany, to South America. Prabhupada didn't say wait 10 years. Wait till you get your Bhakti Shastri, your Bhakti Vaibhav, your Bhakti Vedanta. No, he didn't say take 10 years, get your double masters and, get your dund and go. No, he sent them. Why? Because he had full faith in Krishna and the parampara. Yeah, sometimes in a battle people get wounded or die. It happens. That's a calculated risk. Not everyone who comes to Krishna consciousness will make it. Not everyone has exhausted his supply of material desires, or he hasn't burnt them. As Prabhupada said, these sinful seeds of desire can be fried by the process of devotional service. A fried seed cannot fructify. So Krishna consciousness, chanting of the holy name is like burning all these sinful seeds of desire in the heart. They can't fructify. You may momentarily experience them, but then they can be kicked away very easily, just like empty husks, can be flicked with your finger. They have no more weight in them. They're dry, they're burnt, they're dead. But you have to be confident that it can be done. Don't play with Maya. What did Prabhupada say about his Western disciples? Is that they are not enough afraid of Maya. They think somehow or other we can dance with Maya. No. That'll be your last dance. Maya is not to be trifled with. You have to have a healthy respect. How the material energy can catch you in a second. In a second. They have these things called honey traps, in clandestine service. How do they compromise a spy? The famous spy everybody knows is who? Mata Hari. Mata Hari. She wasn't Indian, but she was of that, somewhere in that descent line. And then she was a spy for the Germans, for the Axis. And she seduced many British officers and got all their secrets. So that strategy is called honeypot. You trap a person by some, like Haridas Thakur. That was also a honeypot trap. They sent Maya Devi personified to try to make him fall down. So these things will always be there. So you have to be alert. Your spiritual radar has to be fine-tuned. And if you don't fine-tune it on a regular basis, you don't calibrate it, then, Maya can get in through the gaps. So you have to close those gaps by hearing, by chanting, by association. One of the most beneficial is association. If you have strong association, then you have no problems. But it's when you're weak and you don't have those close, that tadati pratigrinati guyam akyati prachati. If there's no exchange, if you have no one that you can reveal your mind to, no one you can speak to in confidence, or no one who can speak to you in confidence, if you're not a trustworthy person, if you haven't demonstrated your ability to be a confidant, someone who is, ready to assist others, in a meaningful way, then, yeah, your Krishna consciousness is in jeopardy. I can say personally that without friends in Krishna consciousness, you do not last long. Right? Bandhu atma atmanas tasya. What does that mean? The mind is the best friend or the worst enemy. So better have a lot of friends in Krishna consciousness whose minds are their best friend as well. And then all together you'll have a greater chance of survival. Because you can save each other whenever required. It's just common sense, but people don't take it seriously. You have to have solid friends in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so now we're over. 9:04. Should we ask for any more questions, or just, I'm here. I'm right, only 2 floors up. You can ask me anytime, anything. We don't have to do it here. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi.
His Grace Hansarupa Prabhu ki.
Second, third, fourth generation ki.